Philozoopia.
Have you ever felt like the economy, operates on some kind of secret language? Or maybe wondered what capital actually means beyond just money in your bank account? Well, today we're about to dive into something that's, okay, admittedly dense, but really illuminating. Karl Marx's Capital-Volume-II. And this isn't just some dusty old book. Think of it more like a detailed map showing how capital really moves, how it changes form, and how it reproduces itself within the whole capitalist system. Our mission really is to pull out the key mechanics, maybe uncover some surprising ideas, and give you a shortcut to understanding that whole economic cycle in a completely new way. Okay, so let's get into it. Marx kicks things off by saying capital isn't some static, fixed thing. It's actually dynamic, constantly changing shape, almost like a chameleon, you could say.
Precisely, yeah. He identifies three basic forms that industrial capital takes as it goes through its circuit. It starts as money capital. That's M.
Just the cash on hand.
Yeah, exactly. The money a capitalist has ready to invest.
Yeah.
Then that money transforms. It becomes productive capital, or P. And this is where the capitalist actually buys what they need for production. Now, this buying process, it has two really critical parts. First, there's ML. That's money buying labor power.
The labor power, okay.
And this, Marx says, is the characteristic moment. It's pivotal because it's the essential condition for turning the initial value into something that actually produces surplus value.
Right.
I mean, think about it like this.
Right.
If you pay, say, 50 workers for 10 hours of work, but in that time they collectively produce 500 hours worth of value.
Okay.
Then maybe 250 of those hours represent the value needed to pay their wages, but the other 250 hours, that's surplus labor. That's the extra value created.
So that's where the extra value, the surplus, comes from.
Yeah.
Got it. What's the second part of the purchase?
The second part is MMP, money buying means of production. Right. So raw materials, buildings, machines, all that stuff.
The physical things needed.
Yes, exactly. These are necessary to actually use the labor power that was bought. Then all these inputs, the labor and the means of production, they combine to create the final product. Marx calls this commodity capital, or C.
C prime.
C prime, yeah. Because it embodies the original capital value plus that newly created surplus value. So you have C, the original capital, plus C, the surplus value, giving you C. So maybe 10,000 pounds of yarn is worth 500 pounds. That might contain 422 pounds of original capital value and 78 otters of newly created surplus value.
Okay, so it's like this continuous flow then. Money becomes inputs, the inputs create a product with extra value, and then that product gets sold to become money again, but more money than you started with.
That's exactly it. The basic formula, money turning into more money,
Yeah.
really captures, as Marx puts it, the generation of surplus value by value in its glittering money form. This whole movement, this MCPCM cycle, is the unity of circulation and production. It shows capital isn't a thing, really. It's motion, not as a thing at rest.
What I find really interesting here, maybe even a little surprising, is how some pretty fundamental economic ideas, even from big names like Adam Smith, got a bit, well, tangled up.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fascinating bit of economic history. The physiocrats, particularly Quesnay with his famous tableau économique, they actually made a really sharp distinction early on.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
They separated advances. Primitives think fixed capital, like tools, buildings, stuff lasting years, from advances annuelles, more like circulating capital, seeds, wages, things used up within the year. And crucially, they saw this distinction within productive capital itself, and they linked it to how these different parts transfer their value to the final product, which was, pretty insightful.
Okay, so they were kind of on the right track. But Adam Smith, the sort of father of modern economics, where did he go wrong, according to Marx?
Well, Smith famously kind of blurred these lines. He confused productive capital with capital in its circulation, forms the money capital and commodity capital we just talked about. He basically said capital is circulating if it's parted with, changes masters, circulates further. Which sounds logical, maybe, but it leads to weird conclusions, like a machine would be circulating capital for the person who makes and sells it.
Right.
But it becomes fixed capital for the person who buys and uses it.
Huh. Yeah, that seems inconsistent.
It is.
Yeah.
Marx really clarifies this. He says the distinction between fixed and circulating capital only makes sense when you're talking about productive capital. It's not about whether it changes hands. It's about how it transfers its value to the product.
Okay.
Does it transfer its value all at once, like raw materials, or, importantly, the value paid for labor power? Or does it transfer its value bit by bit, gradually, like a machine does over its lifespan? That's
Yeah.
the key difference.
Why does this matter so much? It sounds a bit academic, maybe.
But it's crucial because Smith's way of looking at it, by blurring these lines, essentially blots out, as Marx says, the critical difference between variable capital and constant capital.
Variable and constant. Remind me.
Variable capital is the money spent on labor power, ML. It's variable because it's the only part that creates new value, that generates surplus value. Constant capital is the money spent on means of production, MMP, materials, machinery. It just transfers its existing value to the product. It doesn't create new value.
I see.
And by confusing fixed circulating with this, Smith's approach kind of hides where the surplus value actually comes from. It obliterates, to use Marx's term again, the whole secret of the production of surplus value. It's fundamental to understanding how profit is generated in capitalism.
Wow. Okay. That really does reframe things.
So thinking about this movement and these distinctions, how does it all affect the speed and flow of capital in the real world?
Yeah, that leads us directly to the concept of turnover time. Turnover time is basically the total time it takes for a chunk of capital from the moment it's invested to go through the whole cycle and return to the capitalist in its original form, hopefully, with that extra M prime.
Right, the MCM loop. Exactly. And it's made up of two parts: the time of production and the time of circulation. Now, time of production, that's not just the time people are actually working.
Oh. What else does it include?
It includes all the time capital is tied up within the production sphere, even if it's idle. Think about cotton sitting in a warehouse waiting to be spun, or timber that needs years to grow before it can be harvested, or even a house that's half built. The capital is invested, but it's not actively producing yet.
So waiting time counts.
Yes, Marx calls this fallow capital. It's necessary for the process to continue smoothly, but during that idle time, it's creating neither products nor value.
Okay, so that's production time. What about time of circulation?
That covers the time capital spends on the market. Two phases, really. CM, selling the finished product, and MC, using the money received to buy new inputs, new labor power, and means of production. And Marx notes that the selling part, CM, is often the trickiest bit. It can take up the biggest chunk of the circulation time and can really slow down or even interrupt the whole process of reproduction.
Right. If you can't sell your stuff, the whole cycle grinds to a halt. So it sounds like this circulation time directly limits how much surplus value can actually be generated, right?
Absolutely. Marx is clear. A capital's time of circulation, therefore, limits, generally speaking, its time of production, and hence its process of generating surplus value. Other economists might focus on, say, how circulation helps equalize profit rates, which is true. But fundamentally, from the perspective of value creation, circulation time is a negative limit. It's time spent not producing surplus value.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think about perishable goods, like fresh food. Their very nature forces a quick circulation time, limiting how far they can be shipped, the size of their market. Or think about massive projects, building a railway, constructing a large building.
Yeah, those take ages.
Exactly. The production time is long, meaning capital is tied up for extended periods without any return. This requires, as Marx points out, huge capitals to start with, and usually relies heavily on a developed credit system to bridge those long turnover times. And this ties into crises too. Capitalist production is driven to constantly expand, right? But if the products being churned out don't actually get bought and consumed, maybe they just pile up in warehouses or with dealers, you can get a crisis.
The crisis of overproduction.
Yes, but Marx specifies it might not just be a lack of individual consumer demand, it could be a breakdown in the exchanges of capital for capital. Maybe producers of machines can't sell them to producers of consumer goods. Suddenly, the need to get paid, the demand for payment, becomes way more urgent than the actual demand for the goods themselves.
That's a really interesting perspective on crises. Okay, so we've looked at the journey of individual capital, but let's zoom out. How does the whole economy, all these individual capitals moving around, manage to reproduce itself year after year? And how does it grow?
Right, this is where Marx looks at social capital, the total capital in society and its reproduction. He makes a distinction between simple reproduction and accumulation, or expanded reproduction.
Simple versus accumulation.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Simple reproduction is a theoretical baseline, really. It's where the entire surplus value created is just consumed by the capitalists as revenue. They spend it all. The economy just replaces itself at the same scale.
Okay, maintaining the status quo.
Exactly. But accumulation is what actually happens. It's the reality of capitalism. That's where capitalists reinvest a portion of their surplus value back into production, buying more machines, more materials, hiring more workers to expand their operations. This drive to accumulate, Marx says, isn't just greed. It becomes a compelling motive, even a necessity for every individual capitalist to stay competitive.
And what if the surplus value they get back as money isn't quite enough yet to, say, buy a whole new machine or build a new wing on the factory?
That's where the idea of the hoard comes in. When surplus value comes back as money, but isn't immediately large enough for significant expansion, it gets saved up. It accumulates as a hoard, or what Marx calls latent money capital.
So it's idle money, just sitting there?
Temporarily idle, yes, but Marx sees it as a functionally determined preparatory stage. It's money waiting, being gathered for the next leap in expansion.
And I guess the credit system plays a role here, too, letting others use that temporarily idle money.
Precisely. The banking and credit system basically collects these scattered latent hoards and channels them to capitalists who can use them productively right now. This gives money capital, as Marx notes, an enormous influence on the course and the stupendous development of the capitalist system of production. It mobilizes that idle potential. Now, to understand how the whole social capital reproduces, Marx divides the entire economy's production into two big departments. It's a key analytical tool.
Okay, what are they?
Department A is the sector that produces means of production. Think machinery, raw materials, energy, everything needed for production itself.
Got it. Tools to make other things.
Right. And Department 2 produces articles of consumption. Food, clothing, housing, entertainment, everything individuals consume directly to live.
Okay. Production goods versus consumption goods. How do they need to interact for the system to work?
Well, for even simple reproduction, just keeping things going at the same level, there needs to be a balance. Specifically, the value created in Department I that represents the wages of its workers, plus the surplus value of its capitalists written as IV plus S, must be equal to the value of the means of production needed by Department 2 to replace its used-up constant capital, written as IEC.
Whoa, okay. Say that again, maybe simpler.
Yeah, it sounds complex. Basically, the workers and capitalists in Department I, making machines, need to buy consumption goods from Department 2. And Department 2, making food, clothes, needs to buy new machines and materials from Department I to keep producing. For the system to balance, the value of those purchases has to match up.
Okay, it's a big exchange between the two sectors. One provides the tools, the other provides the stuff people live on, and the money has to flow correctly between them.
Exactly. It's a macro-level view of that MCM circuit, showing the necessary proportions for the whole system to reproduce itself.
Now, this often brings up that kind of classic question. If capitalists start by putting, say, 500 pounds worth of money into circulation to buy inputs and labor, but they aim to get 600 pounds back, 500 pounds original plus 100 pounds surplus value, where does that extra 100 pounds in money actually come from? It feels a bit like pulling money out of that.
It's a really good question, and it puzzled economists for a while. Marx's solution is actually quite elegant, though maybe unexpected. He argues that the extra money needed to allow all capitalists to realize their surplus value in money form comes from the gold-producing sector itself.
The gold miners.
Essentially, yes. The capitalists producing gold, which was the basis of money then, don't sell their product in the same way. They produce gold, which is money, and they put it directly into circulation when they pay their workers, buy equipment, and spend their own profits. This fresh injection of gold, of new money material, provides the additional circulating medium needed for the rest of the capitalist class to convert their produced surplus value, the C and T, into actual money, the extra bit in M. It's not magic. It's a specific part of the total social production providing the means for exchange.
Huh. So it's not creating value out of thin air. It's about having enough money circulating to represent the value that has been created.
Precisely. The value is created in production. The gold producers provide the extra tokens needed to monetize it across the board. Yeah. And it's important to note, even in the simplified model of simple reproduction, things can go wrong. Imbalances between Department O and Department 2 can cause crises.
Even without growth.
Yes. Imagine Department I, means of production, produces too many machines more than Department 2, consumption goods, needs just for replacement. You'd have relative overproduction in I. Machines pile up unsold.
So Department II has a surplus of goods and maybe money it can't spend.
Exactly. A surplus of money capital in I, potentially. Meanwhile, Department I might not have bought enough new machines, so it faces a reproduction deficit. It can't produce as much next year. This shows how crises can stem just from the internal mechanics, the necessary proportions of reproduction getting out of whack. It's not always about external shocks.
Wow. Okay, so from that shape-shifting journey of individual capital, constantly moving between money, production, and commodities, to this intricate, almost precarious dance between the major sectors of the whole economy. We've really seen how interconnected and dynamic this system is. It's clearly much more than just simple buying and selling. It's a continuous, complex process of transformation, value creation, circulation, all driven by that relentless need to expand value, to accumulate.
Absolutely. So maybe the next time you're holding a banknote or using your credit card, you can think beyond just its buying power. Consider the incredible chain of transformations it represents, the production processes it facilitated, the labor it commanded, and the complex social relationships hidden within it. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other layers of economic reality are we still missing in our day-to-day understanding? And how might grasping these deeper dynamics, these circuits and potential points of friction, change how we think about wealth, about work, and maybe even about the boom and bust cycles we experience?
Philozoopia.